past me, I saw a mirrored man. I tipped my hat to him, and he tipped his hat back to me, but with the other hand. And I wondered if his left was right, and if his right was wrong. I had so many questions, so I wrote this little song. Hey, Mr. Mirror Man, is everything all left with you? And do your soldiers go make peace instead of making war? Do the poor get richer while the richer men get poor? Tell me, Mr. Mirror Man. Oh, it's cold outside, and it's cold in here, and it's cold wherever you go this time of year. But don't you fret, and don't you fear, because I got something to keep you nice and warm, my dear. So let's quilt being cold, and let's quilt being sad, and let's quilt thinking about all the bad times we had. Yeah, let's quilt out of the house, and we'll quilt into the sleigh, and we'll have ourselves a quilted holiday.
When you wanna get from here to there, you gotta build yourself a bridge. But there's a big open pit beware, you gotta build yourself a bridge. Oh child, don't try to jump across it, you don't have to go around. You just gotta cover up that hole in the ground. Girl, you know what I'm talking about. You got to build yourself a bridge.
Hey fella, what's the matter? You say that your window shattered. Well, grab your shutters and hold on to your sash, because here's a way to fix it up in a flash. It's the Maple Blazer, the total amazer, the do it in seconds what you used to take a dazer. Now your window's as good as new, brother, that's what I call seeing you through.
Alrighty. Welcome to the last audio jam. This has been quite the experiment for the last 4 weeks here, doing this every week, reviewing people's demo reels, jumping into how do we get better at our craft. And, I think that we'll jump straight into it because we do have a lot of things to go over today. For anybody who's joining us live, welcome. Feel free to interact in the chat. If you have any questions, anything that you want to go over, you can steer this conversation and make it maximally useful to yourself as you see fit. And then we've got a few things I'll go over here. Let's set some of the ground rules. And if you've been to one of these before, you will be bored of this by now. But there's 4 rules that we have for this event. One is that this is not for approval. It's for improvement. You're not here to get my approval, whether you're good enough or not. It's for improvement. Can you go from level 6 to level 7 or level 60 to level 70 or 600 to 700? The goal here is improvement. Also, number 2 here, see the framework beyond the feedback, regardless of what feedback I might give you on a specific moment in a demo reel or in the presentation on your website. See the framework behind it as much as you can. See, can I draw out principles that are actually here for me across everything I create and not just for this specific moment? Third, misinterpretation is information too. Sometimes when someone sees our demo reel, there are aspects of it that we're like, why didn't they see that part? Or this is what I meant by that, and it's clearly been misinterpreted. That's information too. So whether it's me taking a look at it, or you ask a few close friends or someone to like just look at this and tell you, where are the heat spots for where you got confused or where you didn't know where to click or where something was misinterpreted? That's data 2. And lastly, ego at the door. Learning is for the strong. Ultimately, like all of us are on this journey to try and learn and improve. And hopefully we have a whole life ahead of us where we do that. But we got to check our egos at the door. And that goes for me as well. Okay, so actually, no, before we get to that, we have a bunch of submissions today. And then I do have a number of questions that I've taken from direct messages, some that I've synthesized together from patterns that I've seen over the last 4 weeks. And, we'll kind of sprinkle, we'll kind of go back and forth between those things. But yeah, let's jump into our first, let's see here, just pulling it up. Our first submission was from Nick. Let's go over here. We've got Nick, apologies if I'm saying your name wrong, Budov. And we've got this website here. So first, clean presentation. Love that. It does feel designed, which is quite nice. And that shows a bit of expertise in just general creativity. I do feel like this section here might be a bit confusing. When we're creating something, we're ultimately trying to see if we can find ways to make someone feel, think, or do. Feel, think, or do. And this goes for our audio design. It also goes for our websites and everything else. Now, with these arrows have become more common as something that would be at the sides where you'd click on it to move to the next page. That's actually kind of funny that it even does that when I click on it. So even though you're trying to say like, click here, press play here, I wonder if there's a way to design this that's a little bit more typical, where there's a play button, or if these arrows are maybe more of a background design, sort of in a darker beige color or something like that, because it is briefly confusing for me of that. I'm supposed to click here in the middle. Buttons, generally big buttons, would also have a surround around them. So just a couple of things there. Obviously, like, hopefully I'm not an idiot, but you're losing scant seconds here and there when something is just a little bit confusing. I see here that you do game audio, linear audio, music composition, and for fun. That's kind of cool. I like that. But let's watch the demo reel together and see what we can learn here.
What do you seek? Choose wisely.
Lovely. Overall, I really like it. I think that the design work is really solid. I love that this is a minute in length. Something that I would dock you a few points on, although admittedly you've done it better than a lot of people, is using the first 3 to 5 seconds to show me your name and logo. I'm already on your website. I already have your name and logo. So you're wasting my time. Now, this is the more brutal way to say it, but you're wasting my time by not just getting straight to why I clicked on this and what's motivating me. And I think that this is a principle that we need to think about. The principle is this: we are here to serve the needs of the person who is coming to our website, to solve the problems that they have or to achieve the dream outcomes that they have. So when we put our name and logo at the beginning, that's not necessarily helping them. It's helping us because we're saying, I want my name to be seen. And I think that it's better to save that to the very end. You've already got it on your website. I've already clicked on your website. I'm already here. If this is just strictly being discovered on YouTube, your name is hopefully in the title of the video. Like, there's things that you can do to get your name there without wasting the person's time. Now, is 3 seconds a huge waste of time? No, it's not. But every second counts in the attention economy. So it is in your advantage for you to focus on serving them and what they're looking for first. And the first question they're trying to answer for themselves is, do you have the skill? You haven't answered that in the first 3 seconds yet, right? Now, admittedly, with this one, it is a bit better than I've seen with other folks because at least some sound design begins as a sort of, this is usually a visual term, but a J edit into the next clip. You are doing an audio cue that gets into the next clip. One other thing I would consider here, and because it's so excellent, like you've done such a good job, I am nitpicking here a little bit. But I have heard other audio people complain that everybody uses like the same 3 alarm sounds, you know, for industrial alert, sci-fi alert, warning explosion alert. And so it can, depending on the person, I'm fine with it. Like at a personal level, I'm like, I like that alarm sound. That is the quintessential alarm sound, but it could almost put you in a bit of that meme category, or where it's a little bit like, it's a little bit of a joke, or, you know, and that might not be what you're trying to communicate. You might be trying to communicate, I'm a professional, I'm innovative, I do something new. And because this alarm sound is so overdone, therein lies an opportunity. Make the next greatest, best alarm sound that anybody has ever heard. If that's the first thing you're going to put in your demo reel, like see if you can really make it the very best. Last thing I'll mention about, you know, using time at the first 3 seconds to show your logo. I think that we accidentally work against ourselves when we have that, not just because of the attention problem, which we've talked about, but also because if they click, as soon as they start manually clicking, because they're just like logo, skim, they maybe skim to the halfway point, a quarter of the way through. And often, of course, we choose to put our very best work, what we think will be our best work at the very beginning. They might skip all of that because you made them bounce in the first 3 seconds. So just another reason why don't spend the first 3 seconds talking about you. Talk about their needs and what they want, which is, you know, show me your skill. As for the rest of the demo reel, it's a good variety. I like that it's short. I don't know if this is just a me problem, but I feel like the first salvo is maybe too high intensity and not enough breath. And what I mean by this is, and this is something that we've talked about in some of the past audio jams, sometimes as sound designers, we have run-on sentences, and we end up saying too much too fast with no sense of pause. The reason why this is an important concept for us to get is that if you are just hitting them, bam, another one, bam, next big scene, bam, it all starts to become a bit onesie. It all starts to sound the same. And you've done excellent design. And I'm just wondering if by including some pause, a little bit of punctuation, a little bit of space, a little bit of margin, it'll actually help people digest what they've already seen. Because I think we as an audience, we are buffering the content. Now, you've seen this so many times and at every variable speed you possibly could. So you can witness it at 10x speed. Like you can see all of it and you feel the space. But as a brand new audience member, first watching this, the first sequence, while it has good design, it's lovely. It just feels like a bit of a run-on sentence. And I think that if you paused just ever so briefly, it would give me as an audience a little bit of time to digest things and to actually take in how wonderful your work is just a little bit better. Let's see here. I'm curious. I am going to explore around a bit here. If I click on game audio, what happens? Okay, so we have other reels and things here. Oh, this is cool. I love that this is, to me, this is really great tell me more content. Like you're kind of giving me a buffet of things that I can kind of poke around. I'm curious about linear. Yeah, this is, I like the overall, I like the formatting and kind of what you're doing here. Music composition. Okay, we're loading up some stuff. Let's check out some stuff here on the music side. Now, normally I won't listen even as long as I just did. We're at 8 seconds. I will say, first impression, very fun. Like I like that. It feels good. Let's see here. I'm going to poke around a bit more. That's neat. Cool. The quality is there for sure. It's a vibe. I like it. Let's see here. Yeah, I think like overall this is great. I mean, clearly you're a skilled composer and you've gotten your stuff, it seems, into some higher profile stuff. It reads really well. Yeah, I see in the chat there. Sounds amazing. I agree. I think that this sounds really great. I do wonder if it's good enough. The presentation. Okay, sorry. I got to pause a bit. The music is great. So the following feedback is more about like, is there a better way to present what it is you're really good at? Think of it like a really great meal. It's got all of the ingredients and all of the flavors. But the difference between a 1-star Michelin chef versus a 3-star or whatever is that they played it differently. They present it differently. There's almost a sort of pageantry that can go into the food world that makes something, a high class Michelin star chef. I think that part of me wonders if SoundCloud is working for you or working against you. Like, I'm wondering if, since these are all joined together and it's one topic, Hash Rush soundtrack, like, could you do a mini playlist with all three together? I'm just wondering if there's a way to make it so it's using up less space, because it's really good, but I'm just wondering if, like, I like the segmentation. There's sort of like when you think of a librarian, they have so many books. How are they going to feature them? They put them in sections. And I think you've done that really well here. But I do wonder if there's ways that you can compress the space. The text is good as tell me more kind of content. So I can see here, goal, create music tracks for casual mobile game, Hash Rush. I used a combination of recorded acoustic and sampled orchestral instruments to create the easy casual vibe for the main theme. Blah, 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 for the runner mini game. I changed motif. Another opportunity here. I mean, that's all fine, but I think most people are first not going to read that. Second, if they read it, I'm trying to say to myself as an audience, like, what did that benefit me? If I'm an audio director that's considering hiring you, and could it be said differently or said elsewhere? I think that the idea that you recorded acoustic instruments and combined them with sampled instruments, that's good. But that might be more of just general philosophy of how you work, which could be nested in a paragraph somewhere, a small section of your about section. I don't know. I wonder if, and I haven't looked up these games, but if any of these games have achieved something, like have won awards or other things like that, I would consider putting more of that stuff here and just say, perhaps putting it in the heading, like, soundtracks from the award-winning game, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe even showing a quote from reviews. There's an opportunity here to do social proof, where it's not about your words and you saying, here's my process and I'm so cool and whatever. And instead it's about, here's how the audience responded. Here's how the developer responded. This is what so-and-so said after working with me. So-and-so is amazing. I really love working with them. And, there's ways that maybe social proof and someone else's words might be more powerful than your own. I will emphasize again, I'm totally nitpicking here because the music itself is great. I think the overall presentation is really solid. We're really talking about the top 1 to 5% of how could you maybe make this a little bit better. So anyways, Nick, thank you so much for sharing. Wonderful job on this. And yeah, you should be super proud. I think that is really great. So let's jump over here. We're actually going to go to one of the questions that came up here. Sound standards. What's the difference between bad sound and great sound? What are common mistakes that you see? I think specifically in the world of demo reels, one of the big mistakes that I'm seeing is that people are not making sounds that are believable. And let me clarify what I mean by that. I'm not talking about real life versus fantasy or made up kind of situations. What I'm talking about is the sounds don't glue to the screen. And why I think this happens, sometimes it's a lack of skill. Someone's skill level just isn't there. They don't know how to make a monster that is 6 stories tall sound like it's in the distance, you know? They don't know what they have to do with an EQ and with reverb and with delays and things like that. They don't know how to actually make that happen. So sometimes believability goes down because the skill level just isn't there yet. I think more often than not, the skill level is there, as in you know how to use an EQ, you know how to use reverb and compression and whatever else. But the piece that's missing is actually a thoughtfulness to say sound design is about immersion. Music is about emotion. Voiceover is about story, broadly speaking, and in a sort of Venn diagram of overlapping concepts. With that being the case, how do I make this thing land better? You know, how do I make it so that somebody will feel like this always belonged and is perfect for the scene? Because I think sound design has the ability to immerse someone in it. It's that immersion quality. But then that means that it can also do the complete opposite, a sort of uncanny valley of sound where you're just like, that's not what that sounds like. And one of these mistakes that I see, especially more junior folks doing, is that they are pursuing cool sounds instead of the right sound. And I'm guilty of this myself. Sometimes it's just really tantalizing where you're like, this, you know, really wide, cool synthesis moment that you happen to create or stumble upon. And you're just like, I need to squeeze it in. I need to squeeze it in. And so, you know, somebody is casting a spell or something like that. They're doing some kind of a magic thing. And the sound doesn't emanate from the object of the magic itself, a sword or a wand or whatever. It's this big, wide, huge thing. And it's like, that's such a common mistake because we're not thinking about the audience and the scene. We're just thinking about ourselves and what sounds cool. And we're like just nerding out and so thrilled that something sounds a certain way. Sometimes we can go sideways with that. So yeah, I mean, other differences between bad sound and great sound. I think this concept of focus is a really tough one. I think deciding in the scene, there's going to be a sort of pinnacle moment. Deciding in advance, what is that pinnacle moment? Because sometimes I think we make it so that everything is a pinnacle moment. And to quote The Incredibles, when everybody's special, no one is. And there's something that we do about our sound design where we're not willing to make something a supporting actor instead of the main actor. We make every punch a main actor punch. And it's like, look, if you lower the floor a little bit more, it's actually going to feel like you've raised the ceiling. So use those things in conjunction so that there's focus there. Another thing that makes a difference between bad sound and great sound is often just noise. And this does tie into focus as well. Noise has a masking effect. And the more noise there is in every individual asset in your session, or cumulatively, once you've gotten everything into the game and there's multiple characters on scene, all of that noise stacks up and it obscures. That's why we use noise machines to help us sleep or to make a meeting more private. Noise obscures. And so if you're going to use every little iota of air movement in your soundscape to have meaning and impact, you have to be pretty vicious with getting rid of noise and using noise filtering, using EQ, a lot of things like that. Let's jump into, we had a submission here. Sorry, it's just off screen, just pulling it up. We had a submission here. Well, let's take a look together. All right, I think I'm going to pause there for a second. So the usual thing at the beginning here of using up time to show our logo, if you want to squeeze your name in for visibility, you can put it in the lower thirds. Bottom left is my recommendation. But spending the first few seconds, admittedly, it's only 2 seconds, putting your logo in there, I would save that to the very end. Now, I've been chatting a bit with Joanna over LinkedIn, and she's wonderful. She's been actually watching the live streams, and she speaks Spanish primarily, and so she's been waiting till it goes, into circulation where she can see the subtitles. So, Joanna, hi! Thank you so much for submitting as you have here. Let's talk a bit about this first scene. And draw out some principles here where we can talk about, well, what does it mean to level up one notch on the ladder? Something that I've noticed in this, and this is on the subject of focus, when we're designing a scene, we view the scene very different than an audience does. Often we focus on details and nuances that the audience will not normally notice. And because of that, sometimes we can draw out those details more than they ought to. So there's no hierarchy to the details. And as a result, everything is the focus. Something that I notice in this design here is that, and rightly so, this person who's doing the attacking has a bionic arm and other bionic body parts. No doubt this makes them extremely powerful and capable, and there's sort of a fear that comes from that because our presumably protagonist here is at a disadvantage for that reason. I'm finding that hearing those sort of servo sounds, robotic sounds, it's actually very overpowering in the mix. And these are more, I would consider these more Foley sounds. They are movement sounds, less than being weapon sounds or impact sounds. Now, there is a reason for them being there, but because those frequencies are a little bit more clean and digital, they tend to pop in the mix. So that's something to consider as well. Whenever you're dealing with organic sounds, they tend to settle down into the mix and it's hard to make them super punchy. Synthetic sounds automatically cut through because they're pure waveforms. They're pure waveforms. And so when you listen to this scene, there's that punch that kind of scraped along the back wall. And I'm hearing the servo motor sound more than I'm hearing metal against metal, signifying the danger of that punch. Instead, I'm just hearing the general movement of this bionic lady. So something that I would consider with this scene is, what is the main focus and what is the story of the scene? And something that I would encourage everybody to do when you're trying to figure out the focus of a scene, consider drawing an emotion map or a story beats map. This is something that you could do in a spotting session with a director as well, where you say, look, we have this bucket of time, and during this time, we can't have 1,000 main features. We actually have to focus the attention on a story and a story arc. And I'd highly encourage you to learn more about story arcs, by the way, something that scriptwriters typically talk about. The story arc might be initial danger, the attack and a grazing punch, the wind up to the biggest punch, and then some finish at the end. You can see how we're saying to ourselves, well, there's basically 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 moments here. These are the key beats, and then there's stuff that's going to string them together. Going back to our sentence analogy, we could also say we have paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and paragraph 3, 4. So you have to think through, can we add punctuation and separation between these elements? Can we decide which one is the minor moment and which one is the major moment? And then how are we going to emphasize it from there? Another lesson I think we can draw out from this is it's around material choice. And this ties into the concept of believability. If sound design is about immersion, we need to move towards believability. Now, what are maybe some of the elements here that might reduce believability? Now, it's good that we've got some room tone in the space here. I'm not really hearing a reverb on top of these assets that would make me feel like I'm in a cramped environment. I think that that's a storytelling opportunity here. Now, on the one side, you could say, well, that's just believability. I think if you compare believability with storytelling, it's even more powerful. So we have to, with these two characters, it's a very personal fight. There's a sort of viciousness. It almost feels it's emotionally charged with these two characters. Also, as I look into the background of the environment, it appears to be a very confined space, which if you are fighting a bionic person, it raises the stakes significantly because the danger has gone up. If you're in an open field, you can just run away, but we're not. We're in a confined space. And so I'm wondering if even by introducing a hint of reverb appropriate to this room to where you believe it and it feels very real, hitting it with a splash of that could be enough to make it so it feels more confined, more realistic, and increase the level of danger there. I think also with your ambiences, something to consider in a scene like this to create some variety. I think right now there's a single, or multiple files for the ambiences that are just riding through the whole scene. Even though it would be intensive with a scene like this, I would consider making some variations to the ambiences, and you transition them, crossfade between them with 2 frames is all you need. Crossfade between them, a very quick crossfade, but a crossfade nonetheless. And you actually change perspectives with it. Now, this is a bit labor intensive, but for a confined space where you're trying to create punctuation between these various punches and tension and release and everything else going on, that's actually a nice way to create some variety. Now, you may decide for the sake of efficiency, I'm not going to change the ambience perspective on all of these, but you might actually just save it for some key moments as a little bit of a trick. It breaks the rules a little bit, but it might be a trick that's actually effective. And I think that there's some moments here that we can emphasize more. Sorry, just backing up a little bit. So they punch past, and then we get a counter strike here. And I think that we can maybe emphasize that more because that's our protagonist is starting to win against impossible odds, right? They're in a confined space. They're against a bionic person. They have every disadvantage in this moment. So to show them winning is tilting into the storytelling. And I don't even think there's any sound coverage for that part. There's a hit, the screen flashes, you see the highlight around the character, and that it's a devastating blow. Their neck is going all the way up like that. And we don't really have the coverage there. Now, when they recoil, right now you're not doing any dialogue, grunts and exertions and that kind of thing. I think that it would be a benefit if that was in there, but sometimes we don't include those things because either we don't have the ability to, do it, or it's just not the main focus. I think though, if you're only going to tell the storytelling through the bionic arm sounds and the sounds of their body movement, you could in that moment even have a little bit of a whir down, where their bionic body is actually affected by this trauma. And you hear a little bit of like just a little hint of a power down, not a full power down, but something where if you're not going to communicate that exhaustion or the damage from an exertion perspective, you could consider covering it through other methods like that. All right. Nice job with that. I think I'm going to, let's see. I thought that there might have been another. Well, let's see here. Let's jump over to this. I'm not skipping for any particular reason except for time. Let's skip over to this here. Actually, no, sorry. This is less than a minute. Let's go through the whole thing here. Okay, lovely. Lovely, lovely. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of really great elements in this. As far as this second scene is concerned, I heard a number of swing sounds that they sounded very repetitive, and they also sounded like their tail got cut off a little bit. And I'm okay with steep cutoffs, but there might be a consideration for the sort of volume roll off there. In the last scene, when we have the guns here, I do wonder if that was the right reverb for this room. I wonder if part of the reason why I'm not believing it is we're going from having a reverb on the weapon to some of the responsive sounds don't have any reverb at all. It sounds like they go super dry, like the sound of the bullets landing on the ground. And I think the person running into the cart. Yeah, the table sounds in that. It's not in a consistent space. I think that there could be a little bit said for, can we splash a little bit of reverb on everything? Not maybe even as much as you have, reduce it by 20% or more, and just see if there's a better reverb as well. Some things, let's talk about reverbs for a second. Reverbs are an amazing gift for us making something believable, immersive, big, or small. Sometimes we can make mistakes with reverbs where we're picking the wrong one, where we have the reverb. Sometimes it starts at 0 milliseconds, in which case it's blurring all of your transients on the front end. I would highly encourage you to even just do a study on reverbs for a bit and try to figure out how you can get the most out of them. And one example here on the subject of clarity with reverbs, and this is applicable for your music composers as well as sound designers. When we are dealing with a reverb, this is like such a common mistake that we'll do with reverbs. If we have the original sound, there's sort of a transient followed by some kind of a tail. And then on top of that, we're going to throw our reverb. And if we start the reverb, for the sake of it, I'll do 100% wetness here. If we start the reverb at the very beginning, it masks, and it'll kind of follow like this. It'll trail off. It masks and obscures our first transient. Now, the first transient is really important because that's what our ear actually pays attention to. It kind of does a little pre-processing after that first transient and ignores the tail oftentimes. So what we can do is if we put, usually I'll do it within 15 to 50 milliseconds of delay. If we put the reverb here, if it was at 100, and we wouldn't do 100% wetness, but if it was, it's going to get out of the way of that main transient here, which means that clarity and understanding and interpretation goes way up. In addition to that, often the stock reverbs will have a lot of full frequency treatment. And they will make it so that you're going to be hearing the reverb in the low frequency, the mids, and the highs. And they can actually be too shimmery on the high end, too muddy on the low end. So often on my mix buses, I will put an EQ on the reverb as well. So I'm going to scoop out a little bit of I need clarity in 4K and I need a little bit around 500. I'll scoop that out by EQing it. I'll put on a 30, 50, 15 millisecond delay on the thing. And suddenly, especially if you're using reverb across a whole scene, the clarity of your mix just instantly goes way up. And that applies for both music as well as for sound design. And I think sometimes as sound designers, we don't actually take a step of actually doing a mixing pass on things and making it so that we've created the aesthetic, we've created all of the story beats and moments, but like take a moment to go through and shape some EQs and sculpt out some noise and remove a little bit of the reverb here. Take a little bit of time if you're working with stereo assets or stereo music, throw it into mono, check a phase cancellation meter. Like all of these things can make your mix just super tight and punchy, and it just makes it more impactful and interesting as a result. So nicely done, Joanna, on that, and thank you for submitting. Really, really cool. Well done. So here we're gonna jump over to Matt Heritage. Love how clean the website is. This is really good, personable. The image there, really tight. That's clean, and a clear CTA because I don't have any distractions. Seven seconds. Matt, I love you. You're amazing. I'm sure what's going to come is amazing, but 7 seconds, you can look at all of the clips where logos come first, and 7 seconds is a doozy because within 10 seconds, someone's going to bounce or click away. If they click, they're probably clicking to the middle. And if you like what you had between seconds 7 and 32, they may not see it at all because they're clicking to over here. Okay. I love everybody. You're amazing. But I genuinely think we have to give people back their first 10 seconds. Okay. Let's keep going here. Lovely. Nicely done there, Matt. Let's jump into some particulars here. One thing off the bat, I'll note that your Gmail is Matt the Composer, but the reel is entirely sound design as I understand it. So something here that we can all sort of draw from is we want to have brand and story continuity throughout the experience. Now, I'll admit, really hard. I'm a generalist, and it's really hard to do brand and story continuity. I'm sure that you'd find infractions in my social media and on my website as well. But especially for someone who is a solo contributor, if you've made a decision, perhaps composition is something that you love doing, you would like to do more of it, but at present you're not. I would just encourage you to get, if possible, just matt.heritage@gmail.com. I think that maybe would be a play to just have a little bit of continuity. I've already talked about the first 7 seconds, but again, we already know you're Matt. We already know, we're on your website already. So let's just trim that down. If you want to, you can put your name into the lower third somewhere. There's options there. Diving into the sound design itself, nice coverage. The choice of scenes, I think, is a really solid one. It makes it look like you're going for that kind of a AAA style of game, which is cool. It's good to have continuity in the choice of redesigns that you're doing, because you're trying to say to the world, these are the types of projects I want to do more of, So I think that that's really good. Let's take a look at some of the particulars here. We have this Borderlands 3 clip. A little beastie beast crashes through the wall. I think that the creature growls and everything was really solid. I feel like in terms of focus, there was a lot just going on, and it might benefit you to just do a little exercise of saying, in every little snippet or scene, what is the main actor, or what is it that I want people to think, feel, or do? In this case, we are trying to get a sense of the danger of this beast, right? The whole purpose here is an incredibly dangerous creature who causes death and destruction and needs to be stopped, which is where the supporting scenes of, the guy with the gun coming through and all that sort of comes in, unless I'm misreading the scene and that guy is actually on the team of the the beastie. He might be. Apologies. I might be getting the scene a little mixed up. But all that said, I'm wondering if we can make it so that the sounds of how dangerous this creature are kind of come through a bit more. So I hear like a sound panned hard left. I'm wondering more about, like, is there a scream, a yelp, a terror moment? Now, these are all really tough guys, and I get that maybe they wouldn't do that in real life, but like, we want to fear the beast, right? The whole main sequence here, the first 5 seconds, is like fearing this beast. And so hearing like a kind of sound from the left, it's a little bit apathetic compared to what's happening in the scene. So that breaks the believability of a bit. And it makes me lose that story beat of like, this is a dangerous beast. It's causing all of this carnage. Love the yell. I do wonder if it's a little tricky. The yell works good from a theatrical perspective, but the yell is happening while it has something in its mouth. And like, there's a difference between me yelling like, "Argh," and yelling like, so I'm not sure if that yell made sense there. Maybe more of a growly sort of thing. And there's a brief moment where it has dropped the body. It could maybe yell or growl in that moment instead. Again, these are all little details, but it's reasons why the scene, it works emotionally having the growl there. But so story check, we're hitting the story, but there is a believability factor that kind of goes down, and it just makes it seem like sound is getting slotted in because sounds are fun to have, instead of sounds are being slotted in because they're supporting the narrative and reality of this world we're trying to immerse people in. The palette is nice. I just think there's maybe a few design choices that would make the sound glued to the screen a bit better. I would say that transition is a little confusing to me, just as a general audience note. This is something that Kevin Regami from Power Up Audio often talks about. The choice of clips that you have and how they visually transition from one to the other is a part of hospitality for how you're showcasing your skills. And the clips themselves are great, but that transition felt just a little busy and sloppy to me. There's like a moment there where I just have no idea what's going on. And it's kind of, I guess you are transitioning between two clips there, but like between the visual effects for the transition and just the sounds and everything, I kind of feel like there's an opportunity there to segment the scenes a little bit better. I noticed that this same issue happened at the end of the Batman clip, where we've just had several seconds of Batman sneaking around, which is not a great space for you to showcase all your skills. It is for like a second, but when it draws on a little bit, it feels like, okay, well, what are we lowering the floor just so that I can experience a big payoff? But then by the time we get to this bad guy for the payoff, you transition the scene almost instantly. And so because of that, I spent those few seconds leading into the payoff, and then I didn't get the payoff, and it transitioned to a new scene. So I feel like there maybe is an opportunity there. Great clips, but I wonder if you could do a bit of a re-edit on things. Also, when this transition happens, it kind of sounds like you've sort of flapped out the master bus. Like the sound of grabbing the character feels very boomy bassy, which is very noisy, it feels like, and it actually detracts. I don't get the payoff from the previous scene, and then when we cut to this scene, it distracts me from the first few punches and kicks here. So something to consider: what clips you have, the transition between them, the tension and release and payoff of each scene might be good to consider. Another little note here on Batman. I noticed when he came out of the corridor, the kind of underground corridor, we get that whooshy sound, like a clothy whooshy sound, which I can appreciate that that's maybe his cape rustling or something along those lines. But again, feels very white noisy. And like if you in the real world, like physically bumped your head into a metal grate, you would be hearing the sound of the metal grate. I mean, I'd encourage you, even, it sounds funny, but like, go and explore your neighborhood, find one of those water grates and hit it with a few objects and just like find out, what does a heavy metal grate sound like when it's getting impacted? There might be even an opportunity there to do some field recording and see if you can get some sounds of that metal thunk and bonk and clank, you know, because he's powerful and he's heading through that door. And there just might be a bit of the believability and immersion of the scene kind of goes down when all I'm hearing is like a whooshy, noisy cloth rustle when you've actually just jumped through a metal grate. To your credit, we do have the squeak of the grate in a moment here. The landing sound of it behind you, which is great. It's exactly the right sound. It feels super believable. But yeah, I wonder if there's just a few things you can do to think about the materials involved. So this is a principle that I want to draw out for you. A big part of sound design in particular is material choice. And that's where we just take a moment to create this world almost as if we were a prop master who had to do this for a movie. You got to think of it like we're creating worlds out of sound. Like, for an example, I was just reading through a script this week for a 90-minute audio drama. And as I'm reading through this script, I'm thinking to myself, the person who wrote this is, if they were going to do a movie, they'd bring it to a production company, and that production company would say, what are the scenes? What are people wearing? What are they interacting with? All of the props the props department has to make. And they would determine how these things would look based on the reality they're trying to create. For sound, we're trying to create a reality, and we have to think about the material choice of all of these moments. Now, for the sake of Batman, quote unquote, sneaking around a bad guy's environment, I can appreciate that he might do things in a way that's a little quieter or more silent or stealthy. But there are still real materials that we're trying to convince people about because we're trying to immerse them in this world that we are developing. So take the time, consider what the materials are made of, their weight, their dimensions, their resonance. As an example, if you take, there's these kind of drying racks that you can have in your kitchen for cookies and that kind of thing. They just raise it up off of the ground. Anything that has like metal bars on it, whether it's at a playground, in your kitchen or otherwise, if you sort of run your fingers quickly across that or a stick across it, it creates resonance because these are all like tubes and pipes and there's lots of air and stuff like that. There's a resonance with that for certain material choices. You got to think that through as far as what it is that we're showing on screen. Now I know I dwelt on that scene for a while. Overall, it's a good scene. It's a great scene choice and the design work is solid, but I think that there's a few things that you can maybe do to up the reality, the immersion of it, to make it so this fantastical, gritty world of Batman really comes to life. Let's skip ahead here to this. All right, let's talk about movement sounds for a moment. I think sometimes when we're thinking about movement, we think in terms of whooshes, rope sounds, rod sounds, you know, when you go with bamboo and you flick it around and stuff like that. I think that because of that, we're inclined to use material that is very noisy and organic in nature. I think that with a scene like this, there may be an opportunity to do something more than that. And this is where doing story and design thinking and taking that moment to think about the world you're creating can be super, super beneficial to you, because it gives you permission in the scene to do more with it. So with our current scene, let's think about the materials and the stories that are going on. We have a spaceship. Automatically, that means this is an alien creature with alien technology that is not normal or typical. We have them kind of fly down. So clearly there's some kind of, we have the contrast here, which is wonderful in the background. We have an organic thing like a farm, such a common, humble, sort of down to earth sort of a feel. And then we have the complete opposite, this alien with technology where he doesn't even have to climb down a ladder because he can just sort of float down. So when we hear this white noisy thing, there's a couple things that are going on here. One, the white noise from a pitch perspective seems entirely static. I think that there's an opportunity there where you could have more of a, let's kind of coming down, pitching down, landing down, this sense of otherly alien thing from a different planet coming down to Earth. Their whole concept is they're coming down, right? So even just from a pitch perspective, we can tell that story a little bit more. Also, this is alien technology. They have a glowing backpack thing on their back, and I don't know how this technology exactly works, but go into synthesis land. Like, see if you can come up with some layers and design something interesting there, and then modify it and tweak it so that it fits within the scene. Oftentimes when I'm kind of going in a synthetic direction for something, and clearly these aliens are very synthetic, especially by contrast with the farm in the background, just do a design session where you kind of surprise and delight yourself by like tweaking, pulling knobs and automating things and recording it and doing all of that, and then bring all of that into your normal session. It doesn't have to be in the exact same session. In fact, it's kind of nice to keep it separate. And then bring it back into your session and see how it could inform the scene and everything that you're trying to accomplish there. The last bit here, I know I'm dwelling on this, Matt, for a lot, and I'm cautious. I don't want it to seem like the sheer volume of feedback is something as if to communicate this is bad or, it's not good enough or anything. That's not the case at all. You've got wonderful things. And because I believe in you and the skill that you have, I want you to be able to like showcase it all the more. So let's actually, sorry, I do see the comments here. Matt saying also so much room for ambience to fill out the empty space in the design of floating down. Yeah, that's an interesting point, because like with the farm in the background, as we think on it, you can have that contrast between the synthetic and the organic by pitting these two contrasting stories against each other. I think that's a really great idea. Let's see here. Let's talk about big explosions for a second. How do you make a big explosion? Well, you can max out the waveform and have as much low, mid, and high frequency as possible. That's creating your ceiling, right? Another way that you can create the biggest explosion possible is by reducing the floor. And there's this classic scene from one of the Star Wars films where Ben Burtt, I believe, was the designer on this. And there's, an explosion in space, and it's creating that, like creating that explosive sound is actually, can we lower the floor and raise the ceiling? Now you have maximum contrast between these two things. So if I was designing this scene, now we want to make it feel organic and realistic because this is a very gritty kind of environment here. But let's take a look at like if perhaps the volume was sucked out a little bit to create some tension right at the very end. Like we're hearing all that like dirt and debris and rocks and like everything like that. But if we can actually just remove some of that, think of a DJ, right? And this is an extreme example, but like, why is the drop so satisfying? Because usually it's like riser, 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 nothing. And then, and you drop straight into the thing. I think there's the same opportunity for us as sound designers. These are musical principles, but a lot of folks who do sound design are musicians as well. So take that cross training and take it with you into what you're doing here. Anyways, I've dwelt on this long enough. Matt, you're amazing. I think your presentation here and what you've got going on is really, really solid. And just well done. Well done. Yeah, I see there in the chat, explosions are hard, especially when it comes to mixing. Yeah, It really is. I mean, it's one of those things that explosions are like a key part of what we often end up doing. But mixing it all together and making a great, satisfying explosion, it's a discipline by itself. And I encourage everybody, like, do a design study on like an explosion, like come up with a scene and think of how you can reskin it in 5 different varieties. Like, what are the varieties of explosions? Like, you have some that are synthetic in nature, like very high technology in nature. You have some that are organic and gritty, lots of fire and kind of just very dangerous, grounded, immersive kind of sounds. There's small explosions, big explosions. Like, do a design study on all of this. Grab 10 different clips and design these things a few different ways and see what you can learn from it. Because rarely is someone going to go in their career in audio and not have to do an explosion. So get amazingly good at it. Let's see. I'm going to cut over here to another one of the questions that we have. What are audio directors looking for? When an audio director is trying to hire a sound designer, what are they looking for in the person or in the demo reel? Similarly, what about for composers? Okay, I think that there's a lot here that we can dive into. Let's start with like, what are they looking for in terms of the person? I think a really great litmus for who are the people you want to work with are, am I happy to be around this person if it's 3 a.m. and we're in the worst part of the project? I'm going to shout out someone now. Toby Hulse. We recently did the Superman Experience, which is a theme park attraction for Warner Brothers. And Toby and I were working 18-hour days. Now, that's not what we want to do, and that's not an all the time kind of thing. But we were in LA. We're working 18-hour days. We're in this 100-year-old soundstage, needing to solve pretty complex problems and make sure that this attraction launches on time. And I would not want it to be there with anybody else. His hardworking nature, his relentless energy, his desire to solve the problem and not just identify problems. Like he's the kind of person that you can rely on. And when we're both tired and exhausted, that's when people can be short with each other. That's when you can have strife and just have friction. But Toby's the sort of person that is like gonna make it through and is not gonna tire out and quit. And he was just an incredible gift during that project. And it's something that just, that's the kind of person I want to work with. Right now, I don't want to subject my team to crazy hours or things like that. That was just a known thing. We were there for a specific work trip and we knew it was going to be pretty intense. But I think that the things we're trying to look for is this person good at their craft? Are they hardworking? Are they problem solvers instead of just problem identifiers? The first skill is good. You need to be a problem identifier first, but you need to be a problem solver as well. Can you bring solutions? Is this somebody who is collaborative, or are they very ego driven? Is this somebody who is going to pitch in a hand and not segment their commitment? That's a weird way of putting it, but what I mean by this is, if you were in a studio and there was garbage on the ground, who's responsible for picking it up? Some might say, well, we have janitors for that. I'm busy. Others would say, this is my studio. And they would feel a sense of responsibility for it. And if they saw someone doing the littering, they might say, oh, hey, you dropped something there. And gracefully just give them the space to like be a part of we. Be a part of we. We are a team. People like us do things like this. We keep a clean house, you know? So there's stuff like that, that sense of responsibility and ownership that you're kind of looking for in the person. In terms of the demo reel, we're looking for, do they have the skill? Is there social proof of some form or fashion that they have what it takes for our particular environment? Now, being a junior, you don't have a lot of social proof. But like, can you do one project for someone where they're thrilled enough to say, you're amazing. I really love what you did. That was really great. And you say to them, hey, would you be willing to write that down? Or could I use that as a quote on my website? And they don't have to be a person of tremendous profile in order for you to just have the social proof that, like, I worked with Sally. She says I'm awesome. You know, let other people's words kind of show that you are good and skillful. And you could be a junior and you can still get people's recommendations, right? If you can't do enough to like delight one person, a client, you know, someone you do something for, you know, for free, quote unquote, that's a whole other topic. But if you can't delight one person and find someone who would willing to recommend you, work on that a little bit, you know? So yeah, do they have the skill? Is there any kind of proof that they are able to do what they say they're able to do? In the form of a reel, in the form of social proof, in the form of accolades, if they have them, nominations or awards that have been won, etc. Have they done a project of this sort before? That's not essential, but it is helpful if I'm looking for a senior level person. I'm not going to hire a senior level person for a certain game if they haven't done that style of game before, likely. So that's a helpful thing. Now, what about composers? What are audio directors looking for composers? I think that for composers, it's still the same thing. Do they have the skill? Is there social proof? Have they done projects of this sort? I think for composers, an additional layer is I'm often looking for somebody who can do something extremely well. And that's maybe 50 to 70% of what they bring to the table. But then also, are they flexible? Like, you think of the illustrious career of someone like John Williams, and like we remember things like Star Wars and Harry Potter and the Superman theme and all that, but also he did Fiddler on the Roof. And he did Home Alone, and like he did these other projects that were like very different from these major anthemic things that he did, like Indiana Jones. So I think that I look for, are they good at a specific thing? And then are they flexible enough to bring some surprise and variety to the table as well? I see here from Maddie Audio Designs, I've also heard that being open and accepting of feedback is a big bonus, always asking what I can do to be better or improve for the benefit of the project. Yeah, teachability. Oh my. Okay, Maddie, I love that you brought this up. If you are not teachable because your ego is too big, because your pride is too big, because your hurt is too big, whatever it is that has gotten you to where you can't learn and grow anymore, I just don't see a way in which you will have a career in 5 years' time in this industry. Frankly, in most industries now, as technology is advancing quicker and quicker, your ability to learn and be open and curious, I would say that's almost the number one skill, which is funny why I didn't remember it. And Maddie brought it up. I'm glad you did. Your desire to be curious and open and to learn and grow, and then to execute on that and actually do it. That's a part of being a problem solver, right? Like, nobody who's a problem solver has the solution directly in their backpack. I'll put it like this. Like, if you think of a construction worker or a handyman, they have that little tool belt and they've got like a hammer and some nails and a screw gun and like other things like that. They don't have a brand new door handle just in their tool bag, right? But they might have WD-40 and they can go there and squirt that in there and clean a couple of things up and unscrew and screw the thing back in and fix it as if it's brand new, right? They are problem solvers. They don't have the solution in their tool belt, but they have the tool that will bring the solution to the table. And I think that openness and curiosity are the tools in your tool belt that you want to nurture if you're going to go the distance in this. Yeah. So I hope that that's helpful. Let's jump over to another review here. This is Louisa Zarama, if I'm saying that correctly here. And this creature here has been like blowing up everywhere. I have young kids and I'm like seeing this everywhere. I love it. I think it's super cute. I don't know the name of it, but here, I'm just going to load it up and make sure it's in English because I think there's a translation thing here as well. We've got sound design, work, implementation, contact. I think my preference, there's no scrolling on the page here. I think that my preference would be that there would be a demo reel clickable right away. I like having these headers here, but you are making me click one extra time before I get to actually see things. And I'm also not 100% sure the difference between sound design and work. So featured work. Now, mind you, because I am using like a translation, there could be a translation layer here, which is a problem. Sorry. Okay. Back to English, sound design. Okay. I have to say this thing, very cool. Like just from a website design perspective, that's really neat. I did notice, it looks like the same clip on this one as it is on this one, which is maybe, oh, it's originally in English. Oh, okay. I see that in the comments there. Louisa, welcome, by the way, welcome here. Yeah, I think this is all a really cool design. I do question like, okay, now I'm 2 clicks in and I still haven't seen your work. So it's so tough because this, I think I'm like, okay with this being maybe your landing page perhaps. But again, it's just sort of running the risk here of being multiple clicks in and not have gotten what I need as the person who's looking at your site. There's a little bit of a hint of a risk there. I'm being a bit nitpicky, but that's just because like, clearly you're thoughtful in how you're designing the site, and that says a lot about your creative taste and aesthetic. But functionally speaking, there's a part of me that's like, if I have 500 of these websites I need to comb through and I need to click, 3 times more on your site than someone else's to start hearing it, there's a chance I'll bounce. And that hopefully that's not reflective of me. I think this is just like in worst case scenario, if you have an audio director who's super, super busy, the more clicks you're forcing them to do can sometimes just waste their time. Okay. So nitpicky, absolutely. But, it's sort of true. So let's take a look at some design work. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Nicely done. Okay, I think I understand maybe what happened now. That one shows all the clips. I'm guessing this is just an individual short clip. Ah, yes. Okay, that makes a bit of sense. That's the interesting thing. This scrolling thing is so cool. So I totally know why it's there. But now it's like, instead of having the curated experience of the work being shown in the way you want to show it, it runs the risk a little bit that they don't see all of it because they only click on one of these. So something for you to consider. That I don't have a clear like answer for it, but I do feel like the mechanism of the website, which I know is so cool and I like it a lot, but I do wonder if it gets in the way of the purpose of the website. And so that's something to be considered. Going back to the main reel here, it's a good variety of clips. I really liked the breadth. I think that was actually a really great representation of your skill over a number of different verticals, which signals to me this person is flexible and dynamic. They can probably do a lot of things. It also signals to me that you're more of a generalist, which for a small company like my own or a smaller team, that's a benefit to you. For bigger, like AAA companies, it's less of a benefit for you to be a generalist. Sometimes it can be, but it's generally like a little bit less of a benefit in that situation. But for a small team like mine, I think it's really interesting. A couple presentation notes here. I noticed for this scene here, where you've done some sound design stuff, we kind of have text over text, and it's kind of making it so I'm getting distracted by the form factor of the video instead of focusing on what's happening, like in terms of the dialogue or other things there. So unless there was a reason to obscure the dialogue, I would be cautious about that. That clip also felt a little bit long to me because I wasn't sure what parts I was trying to see as sound design. And if it's just whooshes and pops and that, well, that's good and that's fine. I do think some of your other sound design, like this clip, show off your sound design really well. So if you're saying to yourself, I have all of these clips, maybe you don't have a ton of clips in your bank account yet, you know? And so you kind of want to cram them all in there because you're like, look, I've done a lot of things. I think sometimes it's better to have a focused few that very effectively showcase your skill as a sound designer, or have a very specific point to them, as opposed to a longer clip like that where you risk making me bounce for something that I see some pieces here that show off way more of your skill. So I'd be inclined to either cut down this clip, or maybe even remove it entirely and get your demo reel down to like 1 minute in length in favor of clips like this guy that are really, really solid and really good. One note on this clip here. When we have shimmery, shiny, magical type sounds, I want you to be very cognizant of what key is the music in. See, when we have shimmery sounds, they have a tone to them. I mean, all sound design does generally have a tone, and especially sound design that cuts through the mix, it has tonality. So we have to be careful by knowing what key the music is in. It is going to determine how that sound lands. Now, for this particular scene, this is a very tranquil kind of environment. The music is very peaceful. For me, that shimmery sound and some of the subsequent ones are actually dissonant because I think, I might be wrong, but I think that either they are in the wrong key or they have a little bit of a harmonic in there, that there's more than one note, and in which case it's dissonant. Sometimes we can stack shimmering sounds because we like the way that that first shimmer sounded and the tail of that second one. You got to make sure that, especially if the goal is tranquility, you're looking for something harmonious. If you want to have something that is off-putting, then dissonance is what you want. So I feel like for the sake of a scene like this and where the music is so tranquil, I'd be very cautious to figure out what key is the music in, and can I match that with all of my shimmery, chimey sounds? Otherwise, there's this sense of dissonance that you don't really want in your mix. The sounds themselves are great, but I feel like maybe there's an opportunity there to remove that dissonance. Let's see, trying to think of these other scenes. All of this overall, it was really solid. I think this first clip here is a really good representation of your skill. I feel like some of the storytelling in it is lacking a little bit. And let me explain, because that's really generic feedback. If I closed my eyes, would I know what's going on? Now, this is a litmus. It's a framework that we can use and apply to anything. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it's really kind of helpful to think through that lens because it makes us really clear on what we're trying to communicate through sound. You have to recognize sound design is a form of storytelling. And if your sounds are just like whoosh, bang, bing, bam, boo, like if it's sort of just, yes, sounds were present and they were in sync with what was on screen. There's a difference between that and saying tension, release, meaning of the material and who, the origin of this character and so on. So when I look at this character and they do that first move, at least in the first frame, this blade is not activated. And when they do their first move, suddenly it activates. Now, I'm getting a lot of a whooshy sort of sound. There's a little hint of synthesis that's a little bit mid-rangey or slightly lower, but I'm not getting like a swing, and every time I did that swing or the, I'm doing this kind of like pitch up movement to my voice. And there's a consideration for like, how can we make it so that moment is about her looking super cool, but it's also about the activation of this deadly weapon that she wields with such incredible skill. Like, let's establish her coolness by focusing on this weapon and the power behind this character and what they're wielding. And then as it goes on, now that first little moment here, was that an attack? Was it I'm clearing the field so that I can show off my greatness? I think, again, the sounds there are kind of just whoosh, like whoosh, pow. It's not really telling a story. So as an example, if it's clearing the field before I do this grand sort of acrobatic demonstration, is there some sense of the wind going, and the rocks going, and kind of the little pebbles and stones kind of blowing away? Is there something we could do with the ambience around the environment to make it a sense of calm or groundedness or the peace before the storm? There's like a few things there that you could maybe consider. That's just a storytelling motivation, but ultimately leads us towards our design decisions. And as the piece continues, like, generally that's okay. I did hear, I think it was in this part. Oh wait, sorry, it was just before that. We're getting, there's some kind of effect that she's doing here. I think she has sheathed her sword, and then she's using her hand. So this is some form of magic. I'm hearing more of like a fire kind of sound in there. When I look at the visuals, at least, and I might be missing some of the background of the actual character here, but I'm not seeing fire, right? So there's kind of a material choice that's in question here of like, I'm hearing fire, but I'm seeing an electric plasma energy kind of thing. It's not quite electricity. It's a little bit different than that. And getting really specific on the materials that you see on screen and how you can reinforce them. It's also blue. It's not red, and it's like, that's such a complete opposite of fire. When it's blue, it doesn't have flames. It's not red, so it makes me think like, how to like spot the scene and like, that you want to put coverage here, but let's see if we can emphasize a bit more of the material choices to make this feel more believable and grounded and real. I think with this moment here, when she's going for the big finale, there's an opportunity here to make this more impactful. Let's talk a bit about like anticipation. Because if we're going to, in sound design, we do a ton of tension and release. We have to learn how to create anticipation. So you've done a bit of that here, but let's see if we can go one level up from this. We jump in the air. I'm hearing the ambience is kind of this whispery vocalization of sorts. And it just sort of drones through the whole piece. I'm wondering if there's a little bit more of a way to hold your breath. When we have an exhale vocal sound that is just in the ambience, it creates an ethereal tone, which I think is what you're going for here. But because it's an exhale, nobody's holding their breath before the big explosion. You know what I mean? So even your ambiences can have a narrative behind them. Not that there's physically people in the room, like a choir or anything like that, but it's just like, is there a way to make your ambience hold its breath before the big explosion? And because it's actually an exhale sound, it feels a little bit like a missed opportunity there just from the ambience. Additionally, if she's going from this great height, is there something we can do from a pitch perspective where there's this like, like where we're actually trying to accentuate almost, it's not going to be this sound, but like the bomb dropping sound, that whistling sort of sound. It's like, is there some equivalent that's actually applicable to this scene so we can create tension before the final explosion? Yeah. So I would say overall, like really great, tons of cool clips. I think that you've got a lot that you should be proud of there. I think that there's an opportunity here to make it so it's just, I'm closer to one click to seeing exactly what you're amazing at. Whereas I'm, a few clicks away from that at this stage, but the website's clean. The sound design is great. I think that there's just a few things that you can kind of plus, and it would showcase your skills even better than you already have. So nicely done with this. All right, we're going to jump into, we have one other question that we'll finish off with here. And by the way, feel free to throw questions in the chat here. Louisa, like anybody there, like you guys are awesome. Feel free to like send something in there if you have specific questions or things that you want to go through. But I'll jump into this here. Let's see. Another question around what audio directors are looking for. From an audio director's perspective, what is your mental framework for transforming high philosophical pillars into systematic logic? How do you conceptually design interactive systems that feel as though they are making emotionally intelligent, sentient choices with exceptional focus and attention sequence rather than just mathematically reacting to gameplay? I'm going to try and interpret this question. There's a lot of like $10 words here, and I'm more of a $3 word kind of a guy. But let's see if we can break down. I think some of this, what I'm hearing is, how do we take the philosophical side of story and the things we're trying to emotionally communicate and get those through when you were ultimately dealing with the mechanisms of using audio middleware and dealing with the player's reaction and action and stuff? Like, how do we make it feel like an emotional experience translated as opposed to just a utilitarian experience as translated? I think that some of that is in the design that you do and the thinking you do in advance, getting clarity on the story, getting clarity on the sort of design rules that you're going to obey later on in the project. Not that those are completely inflexible, but just like coming to some decisions about what this world is and what this world isn't. I think that that's a key foundation. And that's why some of the stories that we enjoy most, the games we enjoy most, they've often got layers of deeper lore, like roots that go down deeper that hold up the tree. And you never see the roots, right? You never see all the thoughtful conversations about why a plant has a certain genus and why it comes from a certain line of plants in Avatar. Like, you know, that's something that they thought through a lot of those things. And it's because they had all those design rules of this world that they were creating that it created answers for the 10,000 questions that have to be asked in the actual designing process of picking sounds and choosing things and going from there. So getting clear on the front end, that's the important thing. As for how you translate that, knowing that there's, you know, sequences and sort of mathematical rules that are sort of coming into play around the middleware and all of these limitations and things that we have, I think that technology is at its best when it is not noticed, but it gives way to better stories, human connection, a clearer sense of emotion. How you manipulate these rigid tools to make it so something is emotional can be a little bit complex, but I think that the key here is to know your discipline of making someone feel something in a linear scene makes it so that the mechanics of how do I break this apart? How many stems and layers do I need? Is this in an audio bank or a single asset? All of that stuff can be answered later. What I really enjoy doing is after we've talked about a scene, what it is that we're working on, what we're trying to accomplish and make, I prefer working to video footage in the DAW that's linear. And the reason being, I will sometimes even over design the scene to create all these little nuances and details that won't translate, that are hard to translate into the technology. But I let the technology problem come later after I've made it so that a scene that I can show the team or director or producer, game developer, that they can relate to, resonate with, and have an emotional response to that scene before we break down everything else. I'll give you an example of this. There was a project that we were pitching for, and it had a lot of physical movement in it, a lot of running and jumping and things like this. And it's very easy from a technical perspective to do a scene with a lot of running and say, I'm going to take my footstep sounds, which often come in this, if it's a library that you're working with, they come in this large bank of footsteps. Often you'll just sort of tab to transient, cut these little snippets of the first sound that kind of occurs. The foot going down is the sound that you care about because you're like, well, they're running. So it's like, what I found was that didn't really feel emotional enough. And I found that the detail that mattered a ton was the actual lifting off sound, just as much as the initial patting on the ground. So there was this little micro scuff sound that kind of happened as the shoe lifted off. And I found that that was as equally worth my attention as the initial landing sound. Now, from a technical perspective of like, do we bake that into the sound banks for footsteps always includes the liftoff sound? Is that a separate bank that is triggered with a slight randomization factor on the timing? Like there's a few technical hurdles. They're small, but like a few technical hurdles that if you're just thinking from a technician's perspective, you might say this is not worth the time. But from an emotional perspective, because I designed the scene without middleware and I was just doing it to a linear video, I realized how critical that layer was. And when I muted it, it was missing and it just didn't work. And so I think that that's some of how, at least I've gotten around this, that it's like, have good planning, research, discovery, and design language up front. Consider designing to linear media and kind of even over designing the scene beyond what actual assets need to go into the final deliverables. And then from there, ask the question, what is the best way to break apart these assets? Now, doing it in a sequential way like that is not always necessary, but I think it's one way to make it so that you're not just getting driven by the mechanics of middleware or other things like that. Instead, you're saying, what is the creative outcome, the storytelling outcome, the believability and immersion outcome that I am seeking, and how can I make it happen? And then, from there, you'll get creative and you will make it happen. Okay, so we have one last design here to go through. If you guys have any questions, any topics at all that you want to discuss here, feel free to throw them in the chat. And let's take a look here at James Howe. Now, James and I, we were chatting a bit about this. It's a longer clip. I won't play through all of it. But at one point he was like, I see that you do a lot of game clips as opposed to video clips. I think that the principles are applicable across the board. So let's look at a few clips here and then discuss. Sorry, I just realized that I'll actually skip the first clip here. I'm going to go to, I think there was one. Here we go. We'll jump to this one and then I'll jump back in a second, okay?
There's something quite significant.
All right, I'm going to pause there for a second. All right, let's focus on this clip for a second and then we'll jump around to some of the other ones. I think that this is really good. There's a solid amount of coverage. You know, there's some key kind of emotional moments. But let's talk about like, okay, are there opportunities here? Is there something that we can take it from this level to the next one? I think that there was some interesting creative choices with the ambience in this first clip. And I wonder if there's a way to create a bit of a bridge between the storytelling side of the equation and the believability. Because we have an organic sounding ambience to begin with. And then when the camera changes over, you'll hear it shift completely. I'll play that clip again. I think that's interesting. It's like it does work storytelling wise really well. And I think I was willing to buy into it, but then as it went on, I never got the organic sound back again. And I feel like that maybe it spoiled it a bit for me. Because now we have a different... Yeah, I feel like it's a different ambience now when we cut back to this scene. And I think that I am bought into the change of the ambience for when we look at this new camera angle. But I feel like it would have actually grounded the scene a bit more and just made it stick a bit more when we return to this scene where we're looking at the characters again. By the way, I want to compliment you on when we do this wide shot here. I feel like you did a great job of the cart sound at that distance. It felt like it was tasteful and it showed a light hand. You know, I think of a piano player. I had this wonderful piano teacher named Carol Colpitz. And she played piano for princes and kings when she was like age 13. She was phenomenal. And she could do like 12 degrees of velocity with every single digit completely separate from each other and simultaneously at any time that she wanted to. She had that level of finesse and fidelity. And I think that when you did this wide shot, it just felt very... very tasteful to have the cart so quiet, but so like it was a really good sort of distancing choice there, which I think comes from a bit of your background working more with linear. There's a more refined touch there. So then we have these characters here, and let's get into the next part. And I don't know if you added the drum hit here, but I think that was really good emotional weight. His reaction tells us more about this character than we can know about them by looking at them. I would have, when he turned, I would have emphasized the foot scuff. I think sometimes we don't think about what's happening off screen, but that foot scuff would have been another reminder of the normalcy and the reality of their kind of fleshly humanness on this side, because they are dealing with what appears to be a kind of otherworldly creature almost on the other side. Similarly, I think there was an opportunity for a little bit more of the sound of his armor, particularly when he went to reach for his sword. But these are little tiny details that have a remarkable impact on how grounded the scene feels. As an example of this, with the Superman experience, this theme park attraction we were doing, there's a moment where players are able to interact with Crypto the dog. He kind of flies onto the scene, and at first you don't even know if it is a good guy, a bad guy. Is this a good news or a bad news thing? An enemy coming or not? And then when he arrives, he's right in front of you. There's a complete emotional shift, and it's kind of like to like this friendly, grounded, oh, this is just like your dog next door, even though he's completely not. He's a super dog. And it was the little detail of jangling his collar that really made that scene feel right. And so I think even those little subtle things, like the clank of armor, the sound of kind of leather and things that you might have it in there, but I just feel like I need more of it there to make these humans feel very vulnerable right now, with them needing their armor, with them needing their swords and that. And I just want to connect that to the scene a little bit more. Now, interesting here, up to this point, this character has been a complete secret. So when we do the first reveal in the scene, I think that there's an emotional opportunity there. Think of it like this. If you're in a horror movie or something like that, the character is more scary in a sense when you don't know who they are. Or I think of like Kylo Ren when he had his mask on was a way better character, in my opinion, a way better character than the moment he took his helmet off. So we run the risk of, now that we get a close up of this character, the mystery is kind of gone. And because you've gone to pains to put in like these whispery, ethereal sounds in that, I just feel like we have to be careful of the payoff not being a payoff. Because when we cut to this scene, it makes this character seem almost too human as opposed to otherly. And you think of it like this, like regardless of whether this is a complete human or if they have superpowers, special powers, or demon powers, whatever it is, if they're just a human, that's a little boring to the plot point of them fighting three powerful dudes on the other side. So I'm just wondering, like, is there a way that we could have made it so that when we cut to this person and we do a close up, that there's something about that still reinforces their superiority as opposed to them feeling almost too plain? So I don't know what you would do. It might be a little bit more like another drum hit or something, but there's just not a lot of impact for the great reveal moment that we just had there. And I feel like that's where we're lacking a little bit of that emotional intensity. It starts to wane a bit. Now with the bomb moment here, this could be a sort of, where do you get your assets from? Is it something you made? Is it something that you had in a library? I am finding that you've done a great job creating a world that feels really real and immersive. But when that bomb has the fizzle sound, it sounds completely like the wrong fizzle to me. The fidelity seems much lower than everything else I'm hearing. It's all kind of mid-rangey and there's no sizzle and crackle on the top end. So it kind of breaks immersion for this really cool moment. Yeah, like that sound just it needs more sizzle and crackle on the top end. I think the explosion, similarly, it's closer to a drum sound, which is maybe okay. But I kind of feel like it's a verbed out drum as opposed to an actual explosion with debris and human consequences, you know, limbs flying and things like that. There's something about it that the climactic moment there was good, but I think that there's avenues there where you can maybe make it great. Skimming ahead here, we have a great grounded scene where we've got the flapping of flags and everything else going on. And then we have this arrow shot. So this character, you know, and this is how I would prime myself for designing a scene like this. I would think through the implications of who they are and what they're doing. This character has defied all odds, right? Everybody else is clearly dead and decimated, and this character has defied all odds. In fact, look at how cool he is. He has an arrow in his back and everything. And now we're, as an audience, I think, given permission to believe that he is a survivor and he's going to make it. Now, that is the thing that we want to subvert to create the most impact with the arrow hit when it comes and the devastation of no, he isn't going to make it. So this is the tension and release that we have available to us. Let's take a closer look at how it plays out. So there's, I think, a few opportunities here from a Foley perspective. One, he gets hit with the arrow. He then falls to the ground here and then rests his head as he kind of gives up and lets out his last breath. No thud sound when he lands, no gack or sound of his armor, falling to the mud and dirt, no sense of scrape or scratch of his armor against the rocks and mud. And then his head falls and as well, there's kind of nothing there. So when we're thinking about the storytelling of this scene, the survivor, he's going to make it. Oh no, he didn't make it. I think that there's a way to like enhance the storytelling by having more than just the arrow sound or the flag flapping sound. You've clearly got the chops. You would know how to cover that scene, but I think we just need to think through what is the story we're telling so that we can find the motivation to do all of that coverage along the way. I think that there's also an opportunity with the arrow hit where, let's see here. Is there a way that we can maybe precursor the arrow sound a little bit more, where it's not going to be this sound, but where there's that kind of whistle sound that bombs have, like kind of before they hit? Is there some version of that, something kind of high frequency that we can hear panned hard right or something along those lines, that we have anticipation, tension, that something is going to happen, and then when it lands, there's a little bit more of that release, and also an unfortunate one because it's like, okay, and this guy's done, he's dead. So some opportunities there. Nice job. I think great coverage across the board. Really wonderful. And then just a few opportunities to maybe push it a little bit further. Okay, let's go back to this scene here. We're going to go back here. Here we go.
Oh, sorry, is she allowed to be in here? Okay, sorry.
May I speak directly to the condemned?
Yes, of course. He will not understand you. We have no common tongue.
He knows that he is...
We now proceed. I have more successes, you must see. That is our old commandant's constructing of our inscriber. The soul, consuming its mechanism. And where I enter the sentence.
The sentence?
Cease! Hold that back! I'm sorry. You must hurry. There's so much to say before... This will be a success. Pure keen glass, right in the skin of the flesh. Now
He's pierced with needles.
Oh, yes, onto his skin will be...
So I want to pause here for a bit of a second. Something that I think linear media, especially when it's drama and very dialogue focused, I think that's something that can be a real challenge for showing our skills, is making it so that it's presented in a way to the audience where they would understand what's going on. Let me put it like this. I'm going to just pull up a thing here. If we are choosing something for our demo reel, we have different purposes for it than what we have when we're actually doing the design for the scene itself. So you have here on this side, the sort of purpose for the actual scene. Sorry, this is way too long. You have the purpose for the actual scene, and then you have over here the purpose for the demo reel. These two sides are sometimes against each other, right? Because the purpose for the actual scene contained within what could be a 30-minute or 60-minute drama is not necessarily the same as the purpose for the demo reel. And especially with a drama that's maybe a little bit long form, very narratively driven, a lot going on, maybe a lot of nuance, it's hard to showcase your actual skill set. So as far as covering the scene is concerned, you're trying to, in the case of the purpose of a demo reel, you're trying to show, I have a lot of skills at this. I'm able to cover fully and it sounds realistic. We don't know, looking at this scene, if there's like maybe, 30 to 100 channels in your session, and that you worked very hard to get that chain jingling sound just right. As far as we know, if you've done your job right, we might think that that was recorded straight off the set. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but we just don't know. So the purposes of the demo reel are often at odds with the purposes of the actual scene. Where that can work against us is that we don't, the scene is confusing because it's maybe been cut down or it's brought out of context. The scene itself doesn't play well because it's a part of a greater creative endeavor and we don't see that. With this, I'm struggling to understand what the scene is about, and the cognitive load that comes with that makes it so that I'm docking points from the sound design, even though the sound design, if I extrapolated it, is good. You know, so something I would suggest for a scene like this, or perhaps it's a matter of grabbing a different scene or just a small portion of this scene, is maybe consider showing your DAW and showing all of the elements that you've created and having that scrolling on the bottom of the scene, and then the scene plays on top. That's a way to kind of cognitively give someone the opportunity to, they don't have to understand the scene. They're going to start watching those little blobs in your DAW, and they're going to have a greater sense of what's going on with your sound design and with your skill, because the purpose of the scene is to make the story go really well. But if it's a big interconnected story, that's hard to squeeze into a demo reel. The purpose of the demo reel is to show your skills, to make someone get to know you, like you, and trust you, and want to work with you. So I think that if you maybe showed your DAW on the lower thirds or, you know, lower half of the thing, it might be a way so that you can actually push people's focus toward your skills, as opposed to maybe getting a little bit confused by the complexity of the scene and how it's interconnected with a wider story that they're not aware of. You know, so anyways, James, wonderful job with this. I know there was other content that you had in there, but just for the sake of time here, we'll cut it short. But thank you so much. Really nicely done. All right, I see that we do have some questions here in the chat. Feel free to keep them coming. As this is our last audio jam, I'm happy to, you know, answer whatever. So we've got here, any tips on finding your specialization in sound design? Some people are really good at horror sounds, others in guns or creatures, etc. Or is it just something that comes naturally over the years? I'll use a framework here that has been tremendously valuable for me in curating my own career. And by the way, you can learn more about it by searching AirCon 2025, David Fairfield. I gave a whole talk on getting your ideal career and the 5 steps toward that. This is a part of that framework. When you're trying to learn any new skill, you start at the bottom with gather. And that's where you're just going to run a bunch of experiments and try a bunch of things out. Then you get into the next part of the framework, which is refine. And that's where you're going to zero in on, I think I know some of the things I really enjoy. I'm going to do more of those and test the theory. Then you get into master, where you're like, I'm going to put 10,000 hours at getting really good. And then there's reap, which is when you're going to reap the rewards and benefits of having specialized in an area. And then there's give, where you're able to give back to the wider community. So something that you can do here as far as learning, do I have a specialization in sound design? Is that me? Does that fill my tank? Does it make it so I can bring the most of me to the table? You might be in the gathering stage at the very bottom, where it's like, experiment, try it out, test it. Now, what do I mean by experiment? I mean to intentionally set aside time for R&D or failure. Experimentation is failure, by the way. It's like trying things and like, oh, that didn't work. Let me try something else. Oh, that didn't work. That's some new data. It's trying and failing and being okay with that cycle. So as an example, you could say to yourself, what are the categories of specialization for sound design? You've listed a couple already. You've got horror, guns, creatures, etc. Even if you just took those 3, say to yourself, I'm going to do a sound design study on all 3 of these. I'm going to learn a ton about it. I'll post on social media about it, because I just say, hey, I'm learning, I'm growing. Here's a sound design study. Hope you like it. You can use it as promotion, as learning, as growth, and then as an act of testing out and measuring, like, is this something that I actually like or not? Now, as you do these activities, just kind of measure your reaction and say, oh, I kind of hated gun sounds because by hour 10 of listening to explosions and gun sounds, my head hurt a little bit. And I actually didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Because if you've played a bunch of shooter games, maybe you've enjoyed the outcome and you think, I'd be great at sound designing for this. There's a whole different thing between playing it and spending 10 hours with the worst version of those gun sounds because you're working to make them the best they can be. And then when they're good enough, you send them out. So you actually listen to the worst gun sounds for most of the day, because when you've completed your work, it's done, you ship it. So that's a good way of just prototyping. And you can also like ask people who are in AAA, like, hey, you worked on this game. I know that you were responsible for all of the gun sounds. How was that? What are the good sides of working with that kind of material and doing a lot of it? What are the downsides of it? And you'll just learn from other people's experience as well. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that's really great. Let's see here. We have... I feel like it's a matter of doing. Oh yeah, someone was replying here. It's a matter of doing, and eventually you'll find what you like and what you're good at. Yeah, totally. I think that's a great way of putting it. And James just says, thanks for the feedback and notes. Absolutely. Any last questions before we wrap up here? Now is your time. Now's your opportunity. I've done Audio Jam for a whole month. It was a really great experience for me. I hope it was beneficial to you. I'm going to be posting various clips from the last 4 weeks onto LinkedIn and here on YouTube. You can also go back and watch through any of the old audio jams as well. And, I've tried to focus these in on the principles and frameworks that can be applicable across the board. So hopefully there's some value for you there. And then of course, feel free to reach out if you have additional questions. I'm not doing audio jam, after this week, but I'm always happy to help and answer questions where I can. So feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. And I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you for everybody, taking the time to check this out. And I think I'll just close off the stream here, listening to some music from may or may not a creepy cozy game that we worked on a little bit earlier this year. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.
I'm afraid of spiders. Afraid to answer the phone, too shy to talk to people, afraid to be alone. I'm afraid of thunderstorms, I'm afraid of bees, afraid of a pile of clothes in the dark that looks like a mummy. I want to run away, I've got to get out of here. I can't take another day facing all my fears. But I should have thought it through before I spent my last dime to ride this midnight train to the end of the line. Afraid of what I'll find.